Hi, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about what you can expect from a raised bed, what some of the, if you just put in a new raised bed. And the reason I'm mentioning this, a couple weeks ago I was at a fair and holding a table from our company for the USDA, and I went and talked with the county agent, the horticulture county agent from Jefferson County, and there was a young couple there. Looked like they was in their mid to late 20s. They had just put in a raised bed last year, and it didn't go as they expected, and a lot of things didn't happen, and we were kind of going, and to the point that they said, we're going to put in another one, but do we need to scrap the old one? It didn't work. It didn't produce what we thought it was going to produce. And we visited with him, with the people, and I started asking some questions too, and basically they were doing everything pretty much right. But I think they had the idea that once they put this raised bed in, it was going to be super productive. It was going to produce a lot of fruit, and was going to have weed problems. And basically, you're going to have problems. Raised beds are great. They're a good way to get started. This is a small raised bed. It's 5 foot by 2.5 foot. But I think I've had this raised bed up for a little over a year, maybe a year. I knew I grew carrots in it last spring. Was the first thing I grew in it, so it's probably probably a year, and I had it. One thing I had problems with, as I was digging up this morning, kind of redoing the bed, it's got all these roots in it. Now these roots, all I've grown in is carrots. These definitely aren't carrot roots. They're roots from the trees that's growing around me. So, we did have a drought. We did get dry. Your roots are going to come in sometimes, and that can hurt your raised bed. But usually that's going to be kind of a year in. Even this year, it probably wouldn't have hurt the bed that much. But you kind of want to get those out. So when you're digging up the bed and refurnishing it and stuff, just kind of go around the edges, pull out any roots that you can find. But the first thing is, if you put in, this has got some good additives to it. But what I was telling him, on the first year raised bed, you get the compost, but a lot of times that compost isn't completely, cooked, okay? It's not really ready. It's kind of a pre-compost. It's got compost in it. It's got, even this, if you look at it, it's got little pieces of wood in it, chips and things of that nature. So it's not the best in the world, and I'll probably put some of these chips in it, but a lot of times compost will have that. And if it's got that, it's not completely broken down. And what happens on a raised bed the first year is you put all this great stuff together, but your biosphere hasn't produced yet. So what happens is in nature, things get out of balance really easy. So what happens is the bacteria in this soil goes crazy. It's got all this fresh, new wood products in it, organic matter, chicken litter, cow manure, whatever, and it goes crazy, and they start producing, and they have all this bacteria. Well, what bacteria does is they will reach out and they'll grab nitrogen, because they use nitrogen to break down, these particles, and they'll suck all the nitrogen out of this potting mix, or all this soil. And when you plant your plants, they don't have any nitrogen. So what happened in this case was they planted their plants. It didn't have any nitrogen in it, and they kind of puny and stuff and didn't do very well, and they kind of got frustrated, and then the weeds took over. And usually it's Bermuda grass. I don't think I got any Bermuda grass right here right now, but Bermuda grass in Texas is kind of the worst weed in the world, because if I put this over a Bermuda grass lawn without anything on the bottom of it, I haven't sprayed it, I haven't taken it out, it's Bermuda grass come all up through it. That Bermuda grass has no problem coming up that 12 inches. It's just going to be there. And so the first thing you got to do is you got to control the weeds. And we kind of went over that. The county agent said we can put glyphosate, which is Roundup. And that's not bad. It's not going to kill it all the way, but most people are pretty anti-glyphosate. I'm not, but a lot of people are. And if you are, that's okay. But if you're going to do that, and you're not going to put glyphosate down, either take it and scrape all of it off and then put down some cardboard is the best way to do it. And really, I'd put down cardboard anyway, even if I used the glyphosate, just to kind of keep that cardboard, may keep that Bermuda grass down, especially if it's in the spring of the year. Because what most people will do, and I give talks to the master gardeners and on nutrient management, I'm kind of a speaker for Jefferson County, and what they want to do with this stuff is they're going to put all this stuff together, they're going to get it all together, and then they're going to plant right after it. What I told other people, the best way to do this is put all this stuff together and let it sit 3 to 6 months. Let that biosphere come up, let everything kind of get breaking down, let that bacteria calm down, because once that bacteria gets back to a different level and dies off, it'll start releasing nitrogen. And you have, but no one does that. I don't do that. What I tend to do is I put all this stuff in here. In fact, I put stuff in here today. I took some stuff out of the I have a fabric pot, mixed in here also, mixed it all together. And usually I will either do it that day or the next day. I'll plant the stuff because I don't want to wait. That's the way we are. We're gung-ho, it's pretty weather, we want to get it done, that's why we're doing it, and we want to plant right behind it. So, if you're going to do that, I didn't bring it over, did I? You can cheat, okay, people, it's okay. You can get some synthetic fertilizer, some high nitrogen fertilizer, mix a little bit in it, and just a minute, let me go get it. I did. Synthetic fertilizers, okay. I have people talk about it's like steroids, but the problem is it's not. And this is some high-powered stuff. You would sprinkle this stuff out, and I've already sprinkled it, but you want it about like that. You don't want to dump a whole bunch. I put this much in it, and that's probably more than I should have. This is a good size container to put for a 4x8 raised bed. All right, put that amount of fertilizer out. Now I didn't tell you what, this is some high-powered fertilizer, and it does vary. The first number, they're gonna have 3 numbers on your fertilizer. It's gonna be, like 13, 13, 13, or 24, 12, or 24, 6, 12, something of that nature will be on those 3 numbers. And they stand for the first one's nitrogen, second one's phosphorus, the third one's potash or potassium. Always that way, it's that way by law. So when you do that, you want to get one that's got a little bit higher rating to it. But you don't want to like take one of the Miracle Grow and have that, they come in one pound package, you put that whole, that's way too much. You can put a sack, a 40-pound sack of cow manure on here, it's not going to hurt anything. You put a pound of nitrogen on here, it's going to burn it, it's a lot of salt in it, and it's going to have too much nitrogen in it. So you can always apply more nitrogen, but you can't apply less. So just put down a little bit like that, scratch it into the soil, and then you got it, okay? Because nitrogen is always wanting to move, it's always wanting to leave. Now, about how much you can plant in these things. The second problem I think some people get is they'll read, I think it was Mel Bartholomew, Matthew Bartholomew. Mr. Bartholomew wrote a book called Square Foot Gardening. I've looked at the book once or twice, I never bought the book. Not that it's a bad book. And basically they'll come up in squares, and every square foot you can plant so many plants. And it's, okay, my problem is you'll see people and they'll take these little plants like this over here and they'll plant them all up, or they'll take tomato plants, just regular sized tomato plants like this here. We'll talk about those in a minute. Full size tomato plants. I said, well, I can plant a tomato plant per square foot. And they'll put, there's 12 and a half square feet in this raised bed. And they won't put 12 tomato plants in there. Or they'll put 6 tomato plants and 6 pepper plants. And every time I start talking, the people start shooting around here. But anyway, there's a gun range not far from here. And what people will do is they'll put all these plants and they'll put one here, one here, one here, one here, and then they'll have another row right here. And it looks real pretty, and they got all laid out, but they never show what it looks 2 months later. Because what'll happen is all those tomato plants will come up and they'll bush up. Them tomato plants can get, at least 6 foot tall, if not 12 foot tall. They are aggressive growing plants. And you try to put one per square foot, that's too many. So how much can this raised bed handle? If you're planting tomato plants, regular sized tomato plants, you want to put one here, that's plenty, okay? And then you can fill in lettuce or something of that nature, that's okay. You can put in a few carrots, some of your root crops, that's all right. Chaos gardening is not all bad. Only problem I have on chaos gardening, where you put different plants together, is one plant may need a lot of nitrogen, one plant may not need as much nitrogen, one may need a lot of water, one may not. So you kind of get that You know, if I got all tomatoes here, or I've got all carrots here, or I've got all, you know, of one variety, I can give whatever that variety needs. But you do tend to have, and here comes my dog too. You do have more variety. You do have more insect pressure if you all have one variety. I will grant that. So, but if you're gonna be planting like lettuce, now you can come in here and you plant this whole thing of lettuce, and that's gonna be too much, all right? So with lettuce, the square foot garden, it works pretty good. And what we can do here is lettuce works perfectly good with seed, but here I'm gonna use trays, and I forgot the variety of this lettuce. And I'm hoping that I can just pull them up. Okay, I can. So this is the tray. I like these trays because if you'll notice, all these roots are growing down, they're not growing around. And you just dig it in. You put it in the way you want it, at the soil level. And these are struggling just a little bit because they got, and then, you know, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna put another one right here. Let's see if I can just pull them up. Yeah. See, that's a good root ball. All these roots are growing straight down. I don't like I like these, they're prop tech trays, and they do tend to make things grow straight down. And you can plant them in here. And then I will come back in. And you always water in your plants because you can have root spaces in there, or air pockets. And that's all it's gonna, now they're gonna look kind of puny right now because they're, you know, seeking out some moisture. And what I do, I plant, yeah, I guess I can go and plant another one since I'm here. Try not to mess with the roots any more than you have to. Now, the other thing is this stuff was pretty dry, and especially well, it was dry anyway. And so it took me 25 gallons of water to get this stuff, you know, moistened up. So don't think that you can walk up here and if you got a raised bed that's dried up, or you got your stuff you're mixing with the raised bed that's dry, don't think you can take this water can and water it 1 or 2 times and it'll be wet. I water it with totally 6 gallons, 3 water cans. I'd water it down, then I'd take my hand and I would do this to it. And about that far underneath the soil, it was dry again. And you know, I did that with the original, and I added the other, I did it again. Like I say, I put a total of 25 gallons on this to get it moist. So when you're first starting out, make sure it's moist all the way through. But this is a pretty good spacing for lettuce. Now, beans, if you want to grow beans, you can grow them about every 3 or 4 inches apart. Read on the back of the package, it's going to tell you the spacing within rows, all right? In a raised bed, they'll have a second one, and they'll say, you know, plants in the row, and then they'll say so many inches or so many feet, you know, 1 or 2 feet between the rows. Well, you don't need that 2 to 3 feet between the rows because you can walk around this raised bed. The reason you have rows there is because it's so you can take care of the weeds and you can harvest it, do whatever you need to do, water, run up and down the rows. You don't need rows in a raised bed. So you can go with that length, with that, you know, the spacing within the rows. So 3 to 4 inches apart is not bad on beans, and what I do, it'll cover the whole area. But if you're getting into the bigger plants, so this here is broccoli and cauliflower, they're gonna need at least a square foot. Okay, so don't think that, you know, and really 18 inches is prime. But if I was gonna grow with broccoli, it's gonna be 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. Okay, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at the most. Because they're gonna grow a big old plant, and if you don't give them enough room, you're going to make them stun out, and they're not going to grow as big of a head. So if you're doing stuff like broccoli, the other thing is planting, the planting dates, and I forgot to bring, I always forget something. Find out a chart that tells you the planting dates for your area. because if you plant these things too early or too late, that you may be doomed at the start. A lot of people in the springtime, they're going to plant their broccoli too late. A lot of times they plant their tomatoes too late. It's a pretty day in April, let's go plant tomatoes. Well, in Texas, that ain't going to work, because by April, if you think about it, I plant some tomato in April 15th, May 15th, June 15th is when they're going to start trying to make your first crop at earliest, 60 days. That's it can get hot in June. And once it gets above 92, 93 degrees, your tomatoes stop producing, or stop setting for fruit. So your flowers stop dropping off. So that's another thing to look at. The other thing I was going to do, now this here is a specialized tomato. It's called a micro dwarf tomato. As you can see, it's already got tomatoes on it, or tomato flowers on it. Now it's been hot, so like I say, you see some have fallen off, but I have some in this other tray that are also micros, and these are planted at the same time. These are all planted. I took these out and put them in this spot here. Show them the ones over there. And those are the other ones. Like I say, these are all planted at the same time. Those back there and this one over here was, we just planted them early out. I didn't have a pot for them at the time. But this here's already has tomatoes on it. So you get to see little bitty tomatoes on it, and it's got several tomatoes on it. So it's doing well. I'm going to pot this thing up and hopefully it won't drop its tomato, because that can happen. I had this all planned out in the north way I planned it. So let's put it in here. And the way I do these, you can just pull them up, but I also kind of like to push them out from the bottom. And there's a really nice root ball. Do not mess with that root ball. If we don't mess with it, yeah, I put it in here, I guess. And just set it down here. I'm gonna take some other. And I'm doing this kind of, I used to think, well, everybody knows how to plant stuff. And as you think about it, sometimes they don't. I one time had a person, I plant, and I don't know what variety that is, but I will find out later. I'm going to plant both. It is a micro dwarf. And we'll plant the other one. Now, one thing I say on micro dwarfs, they're really bad. The roots aren't very strong. If these are regular tomato plants, they would come out a lot easier from that. And this is the only pot they're going to be in. This is plenty big enough pots for the things to make their fruit in. And as always, let's see these over here. You'll come in and you will water them in, because even though you say, well, the soil's moist, you're going to have air pockets, and air pockets aren't good for them. There, over here, throw this in, and the reason, and these are, like I said, they're micro dwarf tomatoes. They only get about 12 inches tall. I like them in containers rather than raised beds. Raised beds, there's a tomato plant, and I was going to bring that book out here and I didn't. Craig LaHoulier wrote a book called Epic Tomatoes, and it talks a lot about the dwarf varieties of tomatoes and the Dwarf Tomato Project. They've got over 100 varieties now of different dwarf tomato plants that would fit really good in this raised bed, because, you know, I was talking about the other plants get anywhere between 6 and 12 foot tall. A dwarf tomato plant, we get about half the size it normally gets. So you're looking at 3 to 4 feet tall normally. So in this situation, I could fit 3 tomato plants in here really easy. They grow up about this tall, okay? And they have tomatoes in them. and they come in every shape, size, colors. Like I said, there's 100 different varieties. Your micro dwarfs, they're going to all be, you know, supposed to be all, they're going to all be cherry tomatoes, because this plant, I don't think you're ever going to have it, because this plant just can't support a big tomato. Okay, you know, it's just you do have to have support whenever the fruit sets, and they were starting to flop over anyway. But you know, that would be how you would do that. But like I say, find out what varieties work best for you. Don't get overly ambitious with your raised bed that first year. It's going to take a while. Your second year on your raised bed is almost always better than your first year, because it just takes time for these things to settle down. It takes time for them to you know, not be overly just don't get too optimistic about it. I mean, I did remember one time Mr. Bartholomew's son was on a video chat, and the guy was talking about, well, you can grow, you know, X number of tomato plants and X number of pepper plants and X number of carrots, and he was going with all the higher end stuff, and even he kind of looked down and smiled, so in theory it would work. And I kind of laughed, because I thought, but that's some of the problem, is sometimes people space these things too close together. They get too much, you know, and you're still going to have to weed. And like I say, that first year, you may have to use some synthetic fertilizers. And to me, that's what I recommend. I don't mind that. Some people are, I'm not going to put out any type of synthetic stuff. And okay, it's just, if you're going to do that, then just wait 6 months and then try to do something. Or try to put in a high, like blood meal or something like that, that's going to give you some extra nitrogen, because you're going to need it that first, you know, couple of months. Because what happened with that young couple is you had all the fertility got tied up, all the nitrogen got tied up, and then when they got frustrated, and you know, because nothing was growing, everything was short, you know, puny looking, kind of yellowish leaves. Well, then when they started releasing the nitrogen, guess what? That Bermuda grass, which loves nitrogen, once that nitrogen was released, the Bermuda grass took over, and then they had a big weedy mess in the raised bed. So the weeds took advantage of the extra nitrogen, but the plants that you planted suffered, and you know, they were already stunted and died out before the nitrogen was ever released. So just be aware of that. If you're not going to use synthetics that first 6 months, you're probably not going to get very good production out of the raised bed, but it'll be better next time. Because when you and I know I'm going a little long, but whenever you put down like chicken litter or cow manure, it may take up to 5 years for that stuff to be completely broken down and not release anymore, release all its chemicals. And I say chemicals, everything's chemicals. But so if you're going to do that, just realize that first year you may put down a bag of chicken litter on this, and only half of that chicken litter is going to break down and release its nutrients. And then the next year you may get 20–30%. But if you put down the same amount, you're going to be increasing your fertility load. So you're increasing your fertility load. You also already got your bacteria there working with you and not against you. So the first year, don't get your hopes up. It's going to be your hardest year, because it's the first year that you're doing it. And you're going to have weeds. You're going to have to be pulling weeds out of it. But believe me, weeds are much easier to control out of a raised bed. Now this is one of the cheap Chinese beds. They're short. I do have the other taller Vigo bed. Let's go walk over there and look at it. And I had a really bad problem on this one with the roots, and I had to go in here and put a massive amount of roots out of it. And then I had ants that came here and ate all of them down. So I had carrots early, and I was hoping to get, you know, these carrots here. Let me go on the other side, so I'm covering everything up. These ants, these here, I know they're not going to make it through spring, but they're going to be growing up, they'll be ready, and then I will get an early crop, and there'll be a sweeter crop than if I waited to plant it. But this is kind of a good spacing. I mean, I got a little bare spot right here, a bare spot right there, but you know, I didn't plant them too thick. You can get the seed tape, and I think that would work well to put out, but this is kind of what you're looking at, and you're going to get a crop next year, you know, next spring. Don't, like I say, don't get too down in the dumps, because first year, couple years I planted in the fall with carrots, I got ready, because I kept thinking, okay, I'm going to make carrots this year, because they say in 60, 70 days, we're in 60, 70 days. It don't work for me. Now, what I've been told is it would work if you have a hybrid carrots, which hybrids okay, unless you're trying to keep seeds, and it's not GMO or any of that stuff. But you take hybrid seeds that's got a 60-day, and sometimes when you plant them early, I didn't think they would germinate, but actually they do germinate even with hotter temperatures. The plants themselves just don't like it. But that way, if I'd have planted them a month earlier, they'd been twice or about 5 times this size probably. And now this cool weather, they've really taken off. But the ants, of all things, ate them all down. And I actually had some of them, ants came in right in here. And again, I had to poison them a couple of times to kill them out. And but anyway, raised beds are nice. It's a good way to get started. Way better to me than in-ground gardening, and it's easier than in container gardening. But one thing I will say on raised beds, you can put more soil in it than people say, because if I had 90% soil in this bed, that'd be fine if it's good quality soil, and 10% organics. Your cow manure, your wood chips, or whatever. That's all you need. You don't need, One thing I will caution you, they work well. If you put in a lot of organic matter in these things, they work well for annual crops. But if you're going to put in a perennial like strawberries, or if you're going to try to put in, if you got a big 4x8 or 4x12 raised bed, you want to put in like a peach tree or something like that in it, that works okay. But if you do that, you want to build up almost all soil where you plant the tree. So that way, because this right here, okay, it's full right now, but it's going to drop about 1 to 2 inches every year. So if you plant a perennial in there, then all of a sudden you keep losing that, and there's no way to get your nutrients back in it. So, but if you've got, a raised area where you plant your tree, or a bush, or your blueberry, or whatever you're trying to put in here, then you can add the rest of it. You can keep adding the organics, and it's okay. You can put, but if you plant that, let's say blueberry bush over here where you had all the organics, and it starts dropping down, there's no way to add stuff to build it back up. So it's just something I ran into when I was planting some trees and when I was in Beaumont. But anyway, I've rambled enough. Hopefully you've learned something from it. I will keep you abreast on the raised beds and how they do. So if you like it, hit the like button and subscribe if you want to get notifications. Thank you.